I see the line before me, so clearly drawn, separating what is right from what is wrong. Everything belongs on one side or the other, or so I tell myself. This is right, that's wrong. This is white, that's black. But that's not always how it seems. There are many things that do not fit on either side of the line. I look around me and I see things that do not make sense. I look inside me and I experience things that do not make sense. If everything is black or white, right or wrong, then why are things not always defined so clearly? I often feel as though I'm trying to do a puzzle with pieces from many different pictures. I search and search and search for the piece that fits, only to find none. This piece won't fit. This piece doesn't match. This piece doesn't belong. This piece is broken. This piece is dirty. Sometimes I feel like the only thing I can see is a picture with no beginning and no end. Just a messy middle with pieces that do not belong. But why? It isn't fair. If everything fit where it belonged, then life wouldn't be so confusing. Or so I tell myself. If I could just see the end result, then I would be okay with the process. Or so I tell myself. The harder I try to understand, the more confused I become. Everywhere around me, there are places with no lines clearly defined. Maybe if I just draw a line myself, then it'll make sense. But now, I am tormented by my own perception instead of the perception I want to see. Suddenly, I'm more confused than before. I question what I thought I knew. I question what I believe about myself. I question my ability to understand. Maybe if I just control a little more, then it'll make sense. If I just work a little harder, then it'll make sense. If I just believe a little more, then it'll make sense. If I just wait a little longer, then it'll make sense. I repeat false promises to myself in an attempt to secure understanding where there is confusion. But my false promises are nothing but failed attempts. The harder I try, the more confused I become. I am trapped in an endless cycle of trying to make sense of what I don't understand. Am I being punished? Am I not smart enough? Am I the only one who doesn't understand this? Why? It isn't fair. If only I understood, then I would have peace, or so I tell myself. If only it was clearly defined for me, then I would easily trust, or so I tell myself. The world around me is a confusing place. My heart and mind tell me everything should be black or white, right or wrong. Yet my experiences often tell me the opposite. They cast a shadow on my perceived reality and lay before me the door into another reality, a reality that is mysterious and unknown, a reality where there are no lines, a reality where things are constantly changing, a reality where no manual exists to tell me how I should respond, what I should feel, or what I should believe. This reality scares me because I cannot predict the way forward. It requires me to trust because I have no control. It requires me to be open-minded because it is a world full of many colors, not just two. It requires me to forsake my desires and opinions because it is a place where I am not the only one affected. Which reality do I choose? Every day I am faced with this struggle. Do I draw lines where there are none? Or do I step into the mystery of the murky middle and trust that this will not be the end of me? Every day I am faced with this question. Do I allow myself to be okay with what I don't understand? Or do I fight to make sense of that which I may never understand? Do I try to control harder, hoping it will align things the way it should be? Or do I let go of my agenda, believing that life does not revolve around my ability to perceive and understand? Every day I am faced with this choice. Which reality will I choose? The reality that I want to see, the one I control and define, or the reality that is before me, the one I experience and influence? Which reality will I accept? The reality where only black and white exist, or the reality where many colors appear.
Yeah, so seeing the world as only black or white, all good or all bad, completely wrong, completely right, all or nothing, wonderful or terrible, we all have a tendency to frame the world in either or terms, right? Polarizing events, polarizing objects, polarizing other people, including ourselves, as completely all this or completely all that, with no middle ground and no gray area in between. So if you consider these examples and see if you can identify, have you ever found yourself making statements like, "You never like anything I do"? All right? "You always think I'm wrong about everything." Come on, you guys. You've said it, you've been on the receiving end. Or have you ever had a mindset that sounded something like this? "Well, if I can't do it right, I might as well just not bother with it at all." Yeah? So you see what I'm doing? I'm dropping things in the black and white boxes. All right, "I just ate a cookie, now my entire diet is ruined," right? "I just blew my budget, therefore I might as well go on a spending spree," right? FPU people. All right, I made a stupid mistake at work, I'm a complete idiot." Right? Black and white thinking. This job interview, man, it was like so good, but this one question totally caught me off guard. I did not answer the whole thing well. It was a complete disaster. Right? Black and white thinking. "I really blew it with my child. I am a terrible parent." Right? "I just felt pretty badly as a Christian. I might as well just give up." Are you identifying with any of these? All right. Or have you ever viewed other people in this way? "He's my dad." I'm afraid this is going to roll off the stage and we're just going to have a mess. So, "He's my dad, but if I admit he did something wrong, then I'm saying my dad is all that." You understand that one? All right. "Oh, that woman in my church, she is a saint. I think she's absolutely perfect." "Oh, nope. Until she bounced out of the white box, that is, all right. Oh, that person just rolled their eyes at me. Everybody thinks I'm just stupid." All right? "My sister is so beautiful and so smart, and I'm stupid and ugly." All right, so sister is in this box. I'm in this box. "My boyfriend, my girlfriend just dumped me. I am just a completely unlovable person." Right? You understand? Black and white thinking. We all have a tendency to do it. Consider these scenarios that are in the front page news. Immigration. All right? Is this all right or all wrong? Right? Muslims. This box, all Muslims. Which one do they belong in? Police corruption and brutality. Which box do they belong in? Democrats. Republicans. Right? This is real stuff. Consider my own journey with some black and white thinking. When I waited tables in college, one of my co-workers was gay. One of the very first individuals I got to know pretty well who was a practicing homosexual. And the situation created this cognitive dissonance for me because on the one hand, as a Christ follower, I wanted to put him in this box because his lifestyle was contrary to the teachings of Jesus, right? But on the other hand, he was the best waiter in our restaurant. He was really good at what he did. No, he can't be good at what he does because, right? And beyond that, he was just a really enjoyable person. I really liked him. We got to be good friends. What box do I put him in? Right? Or another scenario, I can remember the first time I really got to know somebody well who was from a Christian tradition. He was from a branch of the Christian tree that I believe belonged in here. It was this box. These people did not pass go, right? They went straight to, never mind, right? They didn't collect $200. But the more I got to know this guy, the more I realized that he checked off all the non-negotiable, essential boxes that I did on matters of faith. But he had some boxes that I didn't think he should check, right? What box do you put him in? And moreover, his lifestyle matched his profession of faith. His walk matched his talk. What box do I put him in? Right? So I think we all have this tendency to parse the world in either or terms. And so what I want to do is I want to give you a moment to consider some of the people, some of the groupings of people, some of the situations or objects or events that you assess in black and white terms. So take a moment and maybe jot those down if you have a piece of paper. This is participation time. You get to do something. So don't look at me. I'm not going to be doing anything up here. Just tossing a golf ball. What do you see in absolutely black or absolutely white terms? Who do you see in absolutely black or absolutely white boxes? So I suspect if you think about it very hard, you will see that we all have a tendency to polarize things in binary, either or, all or nothing, black or white boxes. And there's a reason that we do this. The reason we tend towards black and white thinking is because it provides us with a lens through which we can easily interpret, and I do think we have this on the screen, easily interpret the world and make decisions. Black and white thinking gives us a measure of security. Black and white thinking gives us a measure of control because it allows us to draw hard lines in the sand to keep us safe from the bad or the wrong or the evil or the unrighteous or the immoral. It's to keep us safe. It's to keep us pure. And so black and white thinking provides us this measure of security and control. But there is a problem with black and white thinking, and the problem is simply this: not everything is either black or white. Let's read that center section out loud together. Not everything is either black or white. Not everything is always either completely all this one thing or completely all that other. The truth of the matter is the world is much more complex than either or. Right? Many situations are much more nuanced than completely this or completely that. And listen to this, every person you will ever meet, I would suggest, is far more complicated than our quick and dirty absolute judgments we slap on them in an unreflecting heartbeat. Every person you will ever meet is more nuanced than our snap judgments. And so there is a sense that the world is more gray, or I think better yet, the world is way more colorful. It's way more colorful than mere black or white. All right, so I have to make a little caveat right now for some of you who are having an internal meltdown. All right, and that's this. Don't get me wrong. There is right and wrong. There is black and white. Please do not hear me say there are no absolutes. Don't send me nasty emails this week, all right? Listen carefully to what I'm saying. There are absolutes. And so what we're talking about this morning is not what's become popular in our culture, popular in the world, that, oh, everything is good, we're all good, everyone's fine, anything goes. That's not what I'm talking about. What we're talking about is bringing into focus our propensity to polarize everything into completely all this box or completely all that box, all right? With the result that we either throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? You've heard that expression? That's something I've always said. We throw out the baby with the bathwater, or we approve the bathwater. I should have a different golf ball here. I wish I had a dirty golf ball. Or we approve the bathwater with the baby, right? And that's polarized thinking, and that's what I'm addressing. This tendency to make it all or nothing, all right? And so this would be an example. So suppose, well, is murder morally wrong? Yes, absolutely. It's a black and white issue. But if you consider a situation, for instance, where a woman shoots and kills her violently abusive boyfriend and then is found innocent in a court of law, what box do we put that in? All right, so some of you are thinking, well, what she did was absolutely wrong. It was murder. She should go to jail, right? So that's one way to consider it. Some of you might be thinking, no, it's absolutely right. He deserved to be shot, right? Or she was defending herself, right? So there's nuance, isn't there? There's nuance. What the court decided was absolutely wrong. It was a travesty of justice, right? So life is complex, right? That's just an example. There is absolute black and white, but life is more complex. All right? I was actually thinking about this just this morning. You know, when God defined black and white, he kind of narrowed the list down to 10 things, right? He was able to come up with 10 black and white things, but he's got a whole book nuancing. An entire book nuancing 10 matters of black and white. Just something to think about. That's not a point I'm making this morning. I just thought, that's interesting. There is black and white. That is the point I'm making. There are absolutes. But I think there are far fewer of them than we draw in the sand. And I think it's especially endemic in the Christian church with Christians. Because we're so paranoid of being defiled or polluted or duped that we draw these hard and fast boxes and we make quick snap judgments and we put them in. Anyway, all right. That's what we're bringing into focus this morning. Black and white thinking is a relevant concern, not only for us personally, not only for us as a Christian community, but black and white thinking is a relevant cultural issue. I want to suggest to you that it's an issue that's becoming more and more problematic in our culture, because on the one hand, and this is very interesting, we are becoming more and more immersed in a postmodern mentality that is trying to erase hard lines of black and white. Postmodernity is saying there is no right and wrong. There's no good guys. There's no bad guys. There's no male. There's no female. Postmodernity is trying to completely erase binary. Right? There is binary in the world, so that's postmodernity. It's happening in our culture on the one side, but it's interesting, on the other hand, at the exact same time, there is no black and white, postmodernity is producing in our culture a greater polarization. We are becoming, in our effort to become gray, we are actually creating a culture that is becoming more and more clearly black and white. You think that's true? Yes, it is true. Dividing lines between peoples are becoming more and more sharply defined. And the result of the, it's all gray philosophy is if you don't see it my way, you're completely wrong. And personal preferences are becoming absolutized. And animosity is escalating between the camps. And so with the result that there is no black, there is no white, there is no binary, is in fact creating greater extremes of black and white. And so this black and white thinking, it's becoming more and more a cultural problem I want to submit to you. And listen to this. As followers of Jesus Christ who are called to be ambassadors of the kingdom of the Prince of Peace, we have got to be more complicated people. You understand what I'm saying? We have got to be more complicated than our polarized culture so that we can engage people in honest conversation and engage people with the love of Jesus Christ rather than box them in and push them away and increase the distance between us. We have to have eyes that see the world around us and the people around us in color. Because that's the world God created. But I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, black and white thinking I want to submit to you isn't just hurting our society, it's hurting us personally. Black and white thinking distorts our self-image. When we think in black and white terms, our inner voice turns on us and we become overly self-critical. Right? Seeing ourselves as completely bad people, or we become people who refuse, like overly self-accepting and refuse to see or acknowledge our own faults, seeing ourselves as completely good. And in reality, we're all in between, right? None of us is completely good. Maybe me, but none of you guys are. And black and white thinking can make us hypersensitive to the opinions of others and make it difficult for us to receive feedback, to accept criticism without feeling feelings of deep insecurity. And that in turn then gets in the way of having compassion for ourselves, mercy for ourselves, and it gets in the way of genuine growth in our lives because we have to protect because everything's black and white. So it hurts ourselves. And with that then, black and white thinking also affects us personally because it hinders our success. When we think in black and white terms, we tend to internalize every failure and we hold on to these unrealistic expectations of ourselves with the result that we'll tend to give up on ambitions. All right, we abandon desires, we fail to recognize possibilities that are out there. These middle ground, gray area possibilities that exist between our polarized binary perspective, that there's only two options. It's either this or that. Right? The options before us are in fact infinite. Right? There's probably an infinite amount of possibilities for everything we face. But when we are locked into binary thinking, right, our success is limited. Think about it this way. Have you ever found yourself caught between like a rock and a hard place? I've got a bad decision or a worse decision. All right? Anybody ever had that? Any other people who didn't raise their hand ever had that? All right, so think about this. If the world is a binary place and you have an option between making a bad decision or a worse decision, what are you going to choose? A bad decision. How stupid is that? I think I'm going to make a bad decision because I don't want to make a worse decision. Maybe the world has greater possibility than bad and worse. So when we get locked into binary thinking, it really hinders our success. All right, so black and white thinking that not only hurts us personally, it also hurts our relationships. Your inner perfectionist not only beats up on yourself, but it comes and it acts out on other people. Your spouse, your friend, your coworker, your sister, your dad is the most wonderful person in the world until they're the worst person in the world. Right? And this cycle of love you, hate you, down, up, good, bad, it really hurts the people we love when we see them in black or white terms. It creates chaotic and unstable relationships. It puts serious stress on relationships. It prevents a deeper bond that's based on acceptance of a real person, a gray person, a colorful person. It erodes our comfort with others because it's so binary. Black and white thinking destroys intimacy, it destroys trust, and it's just plain old exhausting. It's exhausting. By seeing your loved one as either good or all bad, you're not letting yourself see them for what they really are, just kind of a normal, fallible person just like you. And it robs us of the complexity that makes life and relationships so very rich. A last negative consequence of black and white thinking I want to submit to you is it hurts our faith as followers of Jesus Christ. Black and white thinking, it negatively affects our view of God, our understanding of Him, our experience of Him, our understanding of mercy and grace. If it's all either or, I tell you what, it's hard to understand and experience grace and mercy and kindness and forgiveness. Does that make sense? Right? Black and white thinking negatively produces prideful, self-righteous, judgmental, legalistic, condemning Christians on the one hand, or on the other hand, defeated and insecure. I'm a worm and God hates me because I'm a miserable failure all the time at everything I do. Right? So black and white thinking negatively hurts our faith. And so though it's a common strategy that we employ the world, we employ to separate the world into nice, tidy, safe little boxes, black and white thinking actually has many negative consequences on society, on us personally, on our relationships, and as Christians, on our faith. All right, so that's our setup. So now I just want to simply address the question, what does God have to say about black and white thinking? What does God have to say about black and white thinking? And I want to begin not with a particular Bible passage that addresses this topic in black and white, pun intended. Did you see what I did there? All right. But rather, I want to suggest to you a biblical perspective, a way to view black and white thinking in a way that I believe is biblical. So consider this. If any human being ever had the right, if anybody ever had the wisdom and the intelligence and the character to see the world in absolutely black and white terms and to categorize everything absolutely into black and white boxes, it would have been Jesus. Don't you think? It would have been Jesus. It would have been pretty easy for Jesus to say, you, sinner, right? You, sinner, right? You, yeah, sinner. All of y'all, right? Couldn't Jesus have done that? Did Jesus do that? You know, and it's not just mere matters of spirituality. Jesus could have applied himself in black and white terms about everything. I mean, think about this. Jesus' black and white assessment could have applied to all matters of life when he walked planet Earth. Hey, you guys, I know you think you're pretty smart, but everything you think you know about like the solar system and the stars is completely wrong, right? You guys are absolute idiots. Couldn't he have done that? You know? Everything rotates around the earth. Oh, my word, you're so stupid. Right? Not to mention your geology, your geography. You think everything is made up of earth, wind, and fire. Great group, by the way, but that's not the way, right? Metallurgy works. It's laughable how dumb you guys are. Your estimation, this is for you math nerds, your estimation for the value of pi? Oh my word, it drives me crazy. You'll have to Google it. It's like, what does he mean? That estimation, all right. You people are so completely ignorant of absolutely everything, and you think you know it all. Couldn't Jesus have done that? Absolutely. Did he do that? No. So here's my point. I think the strongest biblical argument against living lives of absolutized, binary, polarized, all or nothing, black and white judgment, I think the best biblical argument is Jesus, the Son of God, absolutely perfect in character, in wisdom, in righteousness, and morality, his own example of not engaging the world in black and white judgment. Right? You consider that. But if you need a Bible verse as a proof text, let me offer this. Proverbs 18:12. I think it speaks to the point. So fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. Let's read that out loud together. Fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. I think this speaks to this point. Here's some practical applications I want to tease out from this passage. First of all, I think this passage would suggest to us that we need to shift from certainty to curiosity. Let's read those top two lines together. We need to shift from certainty to curiosity. Why? Because only fools, the Word of God actually says, only fools believe their opinions are the only valid perspective. But sometimes we don't have the whole story, but we will still make black and white judgments. When we are black and white certain and we think that we have all the facts, that our opinion is the absolute right perspective, we will tend to approach situations, we will tend to approach conversations and relationships to be heard, to prove a point, right? To give the other person a piece of my mind because I have the absolutely right perspective on it. That's the stance we take when we're in a stance of certainty. But when we shift from certainty to curiosity so that we can understand, understanding, that's a biblical value, so that we can understand perspectives that are different from ours, that we can understand the complexities of situations that we find ourselves in, then we find ourselves not with merely a message to deliver, but with some information to gather. All right? Not a message delivery stance, but an understanding stance. Some questions to ask and some information to share. Right? You see how it's a two-way street when we go from certainty, which is me, to curiosity. Hey, let's exchange information, come to understanding. All right, and so when we shift from certainty to curiosity, we can step into situations, I'm just reading what I wrote because I think I went off point there. So when we shift from certainty to curiosity, we can step into situations not from a message delivery stance, but from the stance of having a learning conversation. Because when we're in a stance of having a learning conversation, we assume that we don't know all the facts. That there's important information that we don't know, and that there are valid perspectives and valid perceptions that need to be understood. All right? So there's a story from Chuck Swindoll. Many of you have heard of Chuck Swindoll. He's a fairly well-known author and pastor. He tells a story of that he was speaking at a Christian camp in California, and the first day that he was there, a man approached him and said, "Hey, big fan, I have been looking for my entire life to hear you speak." And Swindoll was somewhat flattered, but he noticed that evening the man's sitting right here where Brian is, and just within a few minutes into the message, he's zonked. The man is sound asleep. And so Swindoll's who knows, maybe he had a long distance to travel, he couldn't sleep, insomnia or something like that. But as the meetings went on day after day, Swindoll found himself exasperated that the man was every single night, up until the very last night of the meetings, he continued to sleep through Swindoll's messages in the very front row. All right, so now take a moment to think. It is very distracting when that happens. I will let you guys know. I'm not going to mention any names, but pause and think for a moment. If you're Chuck Swindoll, what conclusion are you going to be tempted to draw about this man? He's bored, right? So that's me. I am a horrible speaker, all right? You might think, oh, what a flatterer, what a brown-nosing flatterer. Tell me, I can't wait to hear you preach. Maybe Swindoll might have thought, he's just mocking me. He hates my preaching, and this is just like an in-your-face, right? Lots of conclusions we could draw. Well, here's the rest of the story. On the last night of this camp meeting, the man's wife came up, apologized for her husband's inattention to his messages, explaining that her husband had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and the medication that he was taking to ease the pain in these last stages of life made him extremely sleepy. But it had, in fact, been one of his lifelong ambitions to hear Dr. Swindoll speak. And now he had fulfilled that goal. Does that change the story? All right. So you can see how Swindoll might have had certainty about what's going on with this man, but had he not stepped into curiosity, he might have completely missed the complexity of life. Right? So we have to shift from certainty to curiosity. A great quote, Leonardo da Vinci, I think, said this: "Nothing can be loved or hated unless it is first understood." Nothing can be loved or hated unless it is first understood. All right, second piece of application here. We're doing okay on time. We need to shift from either or to both and. We need to shift from either or, that's the binary polarized thinking, to both and. All right, so in binary black and white thinking, our tendency is to either embrace this is the way it has to be, or embrace that is the way it has to be. And so we assume then that we must, in a conversation with another person, we must completely accept what they're saying or completely reject what they're saying. And, when we're stuck in this binary polarized options, if we accept that person's perspective is right, then what's that make it true of us? So we're completely wrong, right? So we need to shift from it's either or to the possibility that it might be both and. All right, so I want you to consider this example. You'll have to put on your high school physics thinking cap. All right, are you ready? All right, so a car is traveling down the road. A passenger on the passenger seat rolls down his window, throws a baseball out the window. All right, when that passenger watches the baseball, what does it do? It does what? From that person's perspective, that baseball does an arc backwards, right? Do you understand? You've thrown something out the window, right? Your McDonald's leftovers or whatever, right? It does this arc backwards when you're in the car. All right, now if you were standing on the road right where that person threw it out the window, what would you see? You would see the McDonald's bag or the baseball going in a straight line diagonally forward. Right? You think about this, you can check it out in someplace. I'm sure somebody YouTubed this. All right, here's another perspective. Let's say you witness this event, but you're in a car that's going the opposite direction way too fast. What does the baseball do from your perspective? Right? It travels the opposite direction. It travels forward in a very sharp arc, very flat arc. All right, so which way did the baseball fly? In an arc backwards, in a straight line diagonally forward, or in a very flat arch forward? Which box do we put that in? What is absolutely right and absolutely wrong? Here's the truth of the matter. They're all right. It just depends on your perspective. It just depends on your viewpoint from which, your vantage point from which you are experiencing an event. And they can seem completely contradictory, but they're not. All right, so we have to shift from, oh no, it went straight forward, to no, it arched backwards. It might be both and. Right? Do you see that? Okay, now for you people who are having an internal meltdown and saying, oh, you're saying that there's like morality is relative. I'm not saying that. Okay? So listen to this sermon before you send me nasty emails. The experiences of events varies depending on the perspectives, the perceptions of the participants. And so when we only look through black and white lenses, it can only be either this or that. And when we're stuck in that, we miss the possibility of complexity, right? And we will miss the inevitability of perspective. Right. Fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. Let's read that again. Fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. So we need to understand perspective, another person's perspective. We need to shift from certainty to curiosity, because we're going to have a greater impact on the people around us and the world around us, and even in our marriages and our relationships with people, when we shift out of this certainty and seek understanding with others. It doesn't mean we compromise absolutes, right? When we break everything down into these polarized extremes, we push people away, right? But when we move to curiosity, it allows us to bridge the gap. And that's the place where we can have a greater impact on our world that is growing ever so more polarized. And my challenge to you, church, is have the guts to stand in that awkward middle without compromising, but standing in that gray area, of standing in that actually amazingly, beautifully complex, colorful middle that God created. Shift from either or to both and.